Good morning and warm welcome to everybody. First of all, thank you for joining this webinar, which is brought to you by Telugu Join, which is our own indigenously developed platform. So, a couple of lines about Telugu. It's a one-stop shop for all the communication needs of an enterprise, whether it wants to communicate with the customers, the vendors, or whether it also can be used as an effective internal collaboration tool. So I am your host for the day. My name is Prakash Chhatrar. I'm Vice President at Telugu. I am a chartered accountant by profession, and I have around 20 years of industry experience, having worked with companies like ITC, GE Capital, Metro Cash and Carry, Act Fibernet in my past hours. So, as you all know, the agenda for today's webinar is the one-time restructuring of COVID stress assets, which is announced by the Reserve Bank of India. So, we will discuss and understand the salient features of the scheme, how it can be availed, impact of the same on the lenders and the borrowers, the implementation challenges, and the improvements needed in the scheme. We have with us today as panelists, experts and veterans from the banking industry. Special welcome to our panel members for today, Mr. Upendra Kamath sir and Mr. Mohan Tansale sir. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Upendra Kamath sir, who was kind enough to agree to be a part of this webinar in spite of his busy schedule. Mr. Upendra Kamath started his banking career as a probationary officer in Union Bank of India way back in 1973 and rose to the position of general manager. He was appointed as executive director of Canara Bank in 2009. He got elevated as CMD of Vidya Bank in 2011, and which position he held till the superannuation till December 2013. He has also worked as an MD and CEO of Tamil Nadu Mercantile Bank from July 2014 to 2017. Overall, his banking experience spans over a period of 43 years. I'm happy to have him as a panelist for today's webinar. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Prakash.
So please join me in welcoming our second panel member today, Mr. Mohan Tansale. His credentials are equally enviable. He is a former CEO of Indian Banks Association, former executive director of Punjab National Bank between 2009 to 2011, and the former CMD of Central Bank of India from 2011 to 2013. He is mentor to many corporates, including Rubik's Data Sciences, Corpository, Experience, Capita World, and NetExtra. Mr. Mohan holds a bachelor degree of science, a master's degree in English literature, and a professional credentials like a fellow member of the Institute and Cost and Management Accountants of India, Company Secretary, and CAIIB. Mr. Tansale sir started his career as a probationary officer in Union Bank of India and climbed the ranks to become the GM. He has been conferred with several awards, distinctions, and accolades during his rich career. He won the Golden Peacock HR Excellence Award 2012 Person of the Year for his contribution to financial inclusion by the Scotch Foundation. A warm welcome to you, Mohan sir.
Thank you, Prakash. I'm happy that me and Kamath, we have spent our decades together in the Union Bank and in the industry.
Thank you. So, as a pre-work, we have discussed with the cross section of the industry and banking, and tried to collect few questions or doubts that people have in mind. And so, I will try to cover the same during our discussion. So, to set the ball rolling, my first question will be for Mr. Kamath. Kamath sir, there is a lot of talk about the economy contracting by around 10%, with various agencies making predictions based on their own studies. Can you share some thoughts on how the pandemic has impacted the Indian economy ever since the lockdown was announced in the last week of March? Which sectors do you think are the worst hit?
Thank you, Mr. Prakash. Am I audible properly?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Thank you. To put things in right perspective, let us first understand briefly what havoc this invisible enemy of mankind has, done to the health of the people. In terms of health impact in India, till day before yesterday, about 58.23 lakh people were infected. The death toll mounted to 92,347. The only saving grace, according to me, is the recovery rate, which is high at 81.68%.
Yeah.
And also the fatality rate is much less at 1.58%. And active cases in India as of day before yesterday is around 9.74 lakhs. Unfortunately, we have already overtaken Brazil, and we are at number 2 position, only behind USA, as far as the number of cases of infection is concerned. Now, coming to the economic impact of this pandemic, in terms of growth and GDP with regard to our country, you are all aware that the Q1 GDP numbers are now out in the public domain. Q1 GDP has declined by 23.9%, and the only sector to register a positive growth was agriculture, which grew at 3.4%. Consumption, which is the backbone of Indian economy, has shrunk by 26.7%, largely due to lockdown, job losses, pay cuts, and uncertainties pervading all over, in general. In Q1, that is from April to June, about 65% of Indian economy was under lockdown. Now that gives us an idea about the extent of the impact that this pandemic can have. Coming to sector specific, manufacturing was down by 39%, services by 27%, construction by almost 51%, mining by 23%, trade and hotels by 47%, power by 7%, and the list goes on. You rightly mentioned about the estimated decline in GDP for financial year 2001. Different agencies have come out with different numbers. Initially, the forecast was at a lower level, but given the impact the pandemic has had, in the first 5 months of the current financial year, these agencies have revised the percentage of fall in GDP upwards. India rating says 11.8%, Goldman Sachs says 14.8%, Fitch says 10.5%. But the actual, shrinkage of GDP will be somewhere between 9 to 15% for financial year 2021. All of them have uniformly said the GDP growth will be in the positive territory in financial year 2022. This could also be because of the low, base effect that all these agencies are forecasting a double-digit growth in FY22. Now, coming to the second part of your question, which are the sectors which are worst hit in the Indian economy? I will name a few. Aviation to start with, hospitality, travel, and tourism, construction, real estate, infrastructure and power, MSME, and automobiles, to name a few. These have taken the brunt of the pandemic, resulted in lockdown for almost 3 months at a stretch. Actual revival of these worst hit sectors will depend upon removal of all restrictions which were imposed during the lockdown. Large portion of the restrictions have now been either relaxed. Now there are location specific restriction depending upon the intensity of the damage done by the pandemic in terms of community and localized infections. The second factor will be the actual containment of the spread of this infection. The government coming out with sector specific relief measures will be the third basis. Fourth would be job creation and revival of demand. Revival of demand is the most important aspect which will upon which the revival will depend. And last but not the least, the pace of implementation of reforms by the government of India and the state governments in various sectors where there is a crying need for reforms to be implemented. This is my take on your first question, Prakash. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kamath. I think you made 2 points at the end. The relief measures announced by the government and the pace of reforms. I think these two things will be quite critical, and which also we will discuss further on during this webinar. So, thank you for giving us that overview of this picture. See, during the last few months, a plethora of measures and decisions are taken both by the government and the Reserve Bank of India. So, for the benefit of the audience, most can highlight major relief measures so far announced and decisions taken. And because of that, are we seeing some issues as a result of it?
Yeah. So, Prakash, we should really first compliment the Government of India and the Reserve Bank of India for announcing various measures at the right time, which are very, very necessary first to create the confidence in the economy. As we heard Mr. Kamath, I mean, all the impacts were really shaking the economy and the confidence of the individual. So the confidence building was the first priority, which I feel that the government and the regulators have really done very well. And it is very important in such a situation that you first support the survival, then support the revival, and then the growth. I mean, these are the three stages. You have to really have different approaches. When you look at the survival stage, I think the first thing which was necessary in the market was creation of liquidity. And Reserve Bank of India, through its various measures, created sufficient liquidity in the system so that the lending institutions do not find it difficult to really support the credit creation and support the economy. The second part was that immediate relief, because as you heard about the employment, as you heard about the impact on the cash flows, I think the second most important was the moratorium, where immediately the Reserve Bank of India declared that we will grant a moratorium initially for 3 months and further extended for another 3 months, which has got expired in August end. But I must compliment to the Indian borrowers. Despite moratorium being offered, many of them, those who are capable of servicing the debt, have chosen to service the debt. So my compliments to them. And those who were really affected have taken the moratorium, and the entire financial sector be it a banking or a non-banking sector, have offered the moratorium support to every sector possible. Not only that, when it was envisaged that the manufacturing sector will have to pay for the salaries, pay for the expenses, every bank has given the additional lines of credit the existing borrowers that they are able to support their employees, they are able to support the business to keep life. Then came the Atmanirbhar Bharat, and the best in that was the MSME sector, which contributes 40% to the country. And in that, the emergency line of credit of 3 lakh crore was declared. It means the government of India guaranteed the lending under this. And once it is guaranteed support to the banking industry, that they don't have to provide a capital for it because there is a government guarantee available. On one side, Reserve Bank, on the other side, government gave a guarantee. And I think the mix of two have helped. And today, out of 3 lakh crore, I understand around 55 to 60% availment have happened. And it has definitely helped the growth in the sector. And when you look at the various numbers, you can see the positivity on that. Simultaneously, the definition of the MSME revised definition encompasses the large number of intent of the MSME. Okay, okay.
Complete your
So
answer for question number 2.
So I was just closing at the answer that with all these measures which the government has taken, the icing on the cake was with the declaration of the one-time restructuring, which will be discussed by us in detail going forward. I think this is all from my end, Prakash, and I will once again compliment government and the Reserve Bank of India.
Thank you, Mr. Mohan. I think you put it quite logically, the series of measures. I really like that take of survival, revival, and growth. So, thank you, Mr. Mohan. Coming to our topic of today, the much awaited one-time restructuring of COVID stressed accounts, which is now finally announced by the Reserve Bank of India. And also the expert committee, which was formed under Mr. K.V. Kamath, is also, the recommendations are also notified. So the first point is, Mr. Kamath, do you think this scheme meets the requirements of the financial sector?
Thank you, Prakash. As Mr. Mohan Tangsale rightly pointed out, the battle-ready Reserve Bank of India initially came out with a moratorium of 3 months, which later on got extended by another 3 months, which eventually came to an end on 31st of August 2020. Moratorium, in my view, was like kicking the can down the road. It was not a permanent, resolution of the crisis. What was actually needed was a one-time restructuring without leading to, downgradation of credit assets into NPA. And finally, Reserve Bank of India, as on 6th August 2020, announced a one-time restructuring scheme only for COVID stressed accounts. I repeat, this scheme covers only COVID stressed, accounts. Subject to certain terms and conditions, the scheme permits, restructuring of advances without reclassifying them as non-performing assets. This indeed has come as a great relief both to the lenders as well as, to the borrowers. The scheme, among others, provides extension of residual tenor of the advance, granting of moratorium subject to a maximum of 2 years. It also provides for sanction of additional limits to the borrowers who are in need of additional liquidity to overcome the stress created by COVID-19. From the lender's point of view, that is from the banker's point of view, this has come as a relief because to an extent the credit quality of their loan portfolio is protected. The provisioning requirements are to an extent coming down, and above all, the capital requirement, which would have been much higher had the accounts slipped into NPA, resulting in additional provisions. Even the capital requirements also would now be at a lower level, and it also to an extent protects the bottom lines of the banks, because the incidence of additional NPA will now be lower. Before I take up the second part of your question as to whether it meets the expectation of the lending institutions, I would like to give a few examples of what COVID stress is actually. This particular scheme covers, personal loans and corporate loans. MSME loans are not covered by this scheme. It is covered by a different, independent scheme. Now, firstly, let me come to personal loans, which are in the form of housing loans, educational loans, personal loans, consumer durable loans, auto loans, so on and so forth. Now, what could be the stress here? The stress could be as a result of COVID-19, loss of jobs, salary cuts, shutdown of profession or shutdown of business, a reduction in sales turnover or reduction in professional income, borrower or his family members getting infected by the COVID virus, ultimately resulting in huge medical expenditure, death of the borrower or the co-borrower, as the case may be. In the case of educational loans, the loanee not being able to complete the educational course on account of shutting downs of colleges, and resultantly the borrower, educational loan borrower, not getting a job on time. With regard to housing loans, construction coming to a standstill and the resultant delay in getting positions are some examples of COVID-driven stress in the case of personal loan segments. Now, briefly, on the corporate segment, closure of business due to lockdown, loss of production, decline in sales and profits, insufficient cash flows to meet repayment commitments, partial destruction of demand as a result of close down, labor migration from cities to the rural neighborhood, and ultimately impairment in the value of inventory and defaults by debtors. These are some of the examples of stress in the corporate sector. Now, coming to the second part of your question, are the provisions in this one-time restructuring scheme meeting the expectation of the lending institutions? The answer is partly yes and partly no. Yes, I have explained why it is earlier. No, because there are certain exclusions in this scheme. This scheme doesn't cover NBFCs. It doesn't cover farm credit. It doesn't cover lendings to agricultural related societies. It doesn't cover Government of India and state government corporate bodies. And it also mandates that the accounts must be in standard category from March 2020 till the invocation of the resolution framework. And it also doesn't cover accounts which have overdues beyond 30 days as on 1st March 2020. As a banker, I will not, we should not lose sight of the fact that Indian economy was in a slowdown mode even before the onset of this pandemic in our country. And therefore, excluding some of these probably may have to be relooked is my personal view, and this is my take on this question. Thank you, Prakash. Back to you.
Thank you. I think that was quite insightful. Just one more aspect on that part is so uh, the RBI clearly says restructuring is available for the individuals and the corporates. And we also talked about the different segments. But Moham sir, are there any specific eligibility criteria that are defined? Like, for example, can MSME also avail this benefit over an addition to the available benefit that MSME has? And are there any specific segments which are excluded? Just to further build on this exclusion and eligibility criteria, if you can throw some light on that, Mr. Mohan.
So let me first reflect on what Kamath Sahib had said. It is true that there are a lot of strict eligibility criteria and exclusions, but the banking industry is in the business of restructuring for decades. It all started with the BIFR when the board was created, thereafter the CDR, thereafter the various schemes. But the only difference is that in this particular dispensation, banks were saved of the capital requirement because of the asset classification. Whereas in all other cases, the asset classification has to be downgraded, there will be heavy requirement of provisioning. That does not mean that these accounts cannot be restructured. So I would like to clarify on that part. Whichever account is viable and can be held out for revival should be restructured. But as rightly said by Mr. Kamath, I think even if that could be supported, then the capitalization of the banks will not be an issue. Banks will not have the issue of capital despite having liquidity. Having said that, in the eligibility criteria, as rightly told by Mr. Kamath, about 30 days, default should not be more than 30 days of 1st of March. Then it has been a lot of exclusion which have, but those exclusions are getting existing schemes of MSME in particularly below 25 crore. Then it has been further bifurcated into the different categories of up to 100 crores, 100 to 1500 crores, and 15 crore above, for which the various dispensations have been given by the Reserve Bank of India. Yeah, so I was just responding to the exclusions and the eligibility, where I have given the full details, and I would only like to close by saying that as far as banking industry is concerned, we are open to support each and every account which is revivable, which can be revived, uh, whether within the scheme or outside the scheme. But every effort will be made to make sure, in fact, proactively banks are identifying the accounts which will come under the various criteria. For all MSME account, proactively the bankers are reaching the MSMEs so that the issues are addressed well in time. It's very essential that the necessary support goes to them in time, and that is how you must have seen in all the guidelines where the rehabilitation of the account and all other activities. That's very important. The whole banking resides on the premise of a trust. And if that is carried on, let me tell you, every possible support will flow from the bank. And I'm very sure the economy and the enterprise, everybody in the ecosystem will get helped out. Coming back to the last scheme of uh, 2019 and this, the major difference which is on the asset classification, where in the previous scheme the asset had to be necessarily stepped down to be a non-performing asset, meaning thereby it invites a huge provisioning and the capital requirement. Whereas in this case, to be very frank, they have gone to the extent that during the invocation period and the implementation period, if the account slips into NPA, even that account will be upgraded as a standard and will be continued as a standard asset. And whatever stipulation of the provisioning has been made, 10% for all those who have signed the intercredit agreement, and those who have not signed intercredit agreement, 20% plus provision for reversal, etc., etc., which was not there in the earlier schemes. I think that is the crux of this scheme. Then there was never a scheme for the personal loan. I mean, this is for the first time, let me tell you, the personal loan schemes is coming. We have done the restructuring for MSMEs in 2008-9 when there was a global meltdown. Huge restructuring was done in the Indian banking industry in 2008-9 after the global meltdown. But there was no restructuring for the personal loan, which has happened for the first time in this circular 6 months moratorium. Plus, now you are getting 2 years benefit. So I think every individual who has taken the personal loan has an obligation to the economy at large, to the lenders and the regulator, that they must respect what is being supported to them. That is what is my take on the two things. With regard to the intercreditor agreement approval, 75% by value, 60% by numbers, it remains the same. Yes, there is a very good a provision of those lenders who are not joining the intercreditor agreement to be punished more than what others are required to provide, so that it operates as a deterrent. Let me tell you that entire success of the program lies in when all the lenders, whether you are a majority lender or a minority lender, they go in tandem. If they go in tandem, most of the restructuring are successful. If the restructuring have failed, there is a huge contribution of the various perspectives different lenders carry. That is all from my side.
Thank you. I think now it's quite clear the difference is basically, if you see the personal loans are covered and the asset classification, I think it's quite important from the bank's bottom line perspective and the provisioning requirement.